Hey, Dad.
Hey, Matt.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm well. Hello, listening audience. Thank you for joining us. This is Discussions with Dad, Faith, Blood, and the In Between. Our podcast is being pre recorded because, Dad, you are currently somewhere across this great country on your bike doing Run for the Wall.
I
Did I say
will
it
be
right?
at that time, yes.
And this will air 2 days after my 48th birthday. So happy birthday to me. Do
Happy
you want to
birthday.
sing?
No.
No.
And the people don't want me to sing either.
I don't know. We should have one of those special around the piano recording sessions.
Yeah, I played, but mostly you guys sang.
Yeah, no, it was always
Sheree
fun.
would tell me, quit singing, Dad.
And then she'd get mad at me for being in her ear. So
You're out of key. You're out of key. You're out of key.
yeah. So for our listening audience, just to remind you and obviously remind ourselves of our core promises, my dad and I agreed to prior to recording this podcast. We thought if we're going to have these discussions and we're going to do them in hopes that we spark conversation for you and your loved ones, we should agree to a certain amount of integrity, decorum when we're having conversation. So our core promises are: even when we disagree, we will practice patience and love over certainty. We will tell the truth with care, and we will listen to understand, not convince, convert, or prove wrong. And I'm actually really proud that I think we've both been doing a good job of that in the last few episodes.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always, this podcast reflects our personal opinions and our lived experiences, but it is strictly for sparking conversation. We are not providing professional advice because neither of us would qualify as professionals in, at least not in the field of anything that we're probably talking about on this podcast.
Right. That's the truth.
These podcasts are becoming more and more like round tables with Grandpa Schaefer, your dad.
Right. He would love this. He would love to voice his opinions.
Well, and so I think starting with Grandpa is your dad is a perfect way to kind of get into this probably abbreviated podcast, just because we are pre-recording. And it's hard because you never want to. I always know the shows that I love, either podcasts or television shows, where they've pre-recorded it because they're not talking about anything that's happening in the political or the cultural environment of that week or that day. Even sometimes,
Right.
so
Yeah, who knows
this
what's going to be happening in May when this comes out.
I hope that you and I are both well, and like I said, I hope you're somewhere along your bike ride, and I am celebrating my birthday somewhere because it
Yeah.
is my birthday month, May.
Yeah.
For those listening who want to send gifts, uh, or just the gift of listening to us, thank you.
Right.
So when belief becomes identity is kind of what we're exploring in this podcast, and Grandpa's a great way to bring us in because I'll start with that question. What do you think? I've already asked you how the characteristics that you gleaned from Grandpa that you believe are made you a man and define masculinity. What would you say was his identity as a man in his community, and the belief that drove that?
Well, I guess first of all, do you when you're talking to me, do you sometimes see Grandpa Schaefer? Do you see my dad in me?
Well, yeah, your mannerisms all the time, and then even some of the things that you say.
Okay. All right. That's
Why do you
fair.
ask that?
I just wondered if because did I glean anything from him? That would be a no if you don't see any any reflection of him in me. You know what I mean?
I know the things that I think that are part of your belief structure that became your identity, and
Right.
because they're either things that I'm either challenging in myself right now or leaning into,
Yeah.
right? But you
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
answered the
Of course.
question.
Yeah. Grandpa's identity, who I saw Grandpa was first of all a really good husband and a really good father. That's one and two. Whatever way you want to put them, it doesn't matter. One and two, by far.
Okay.
Um, um, as far as work ethic, he had an incredible work ethic. He was a very good worker. he was a very good worker. He was very professional, and he actually rose way up in his his field, you
Hmm.
know, and had opportunities to go even higher and didn't do it because he wanted to stay in Florence. Um, but in some ways, he was really lazy when it came to around the house stuff. He just, he worked hard. He worked hard all his life, but man, if it didn't need fixed really bad, it didn't get fixed. And I think that was
He
part of his
tinkered. He
identity.
tinkered more than
Oh,
he.
he tinkered a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's some I've got that quality too. Or I got that identity in me too because I'll do the same thing. I'll leave something like a door not working properly for 2 or 3 years, you
Yeah.
know, and I just don't. I guess that comes from him. I don't know.
There are
Yeah.
parts of me that now that I'm, a certain age, I think I could do that, but I don't want to work that hard.
Right.
That's not a good place to be, I've
Well,
realized.
let me give you a prime example. You'll get a kick out of this. We have 2 bathrooms in the house, and because it's just me and Louise, I take one and she takes the other one. We don't just say this is the guest bathroom. I take one instead of using the master bathroom, both of us using the master bathroom. I use that one, she uses the other one. She likes the other one anyways better. Better lighting, everything, right?
It's
And it's
we had an
bigger.
episode 2 episodes ago. It is no longer called a master bedroom bathroom, it is a primary bedroom and
Yeah, yeah.
bathroom.
We just did a word thing last month,
I
and
know.
yeah, that's one of the words I wouldn't use.
But do you understand why the difference between
Yes,
primary and master?
I understand all that.
Okay.
I
All right.
understand.
I
Um,
we can't have a podcast where we did an episode entirely on how words are misused and you talk about. But anyway, I interrupted your story about
right.
Louise using doesn't want to use the primary
So in
bathroom.
my
Yeah.
bathroom, the height of laziness. I'm a plumber by trade, a professional plumber, a licensed professional plumber.
Yeah.
Been doing so for almost 50 years. It
Yeah.
will be 50 years next year.
You're old.
Um, and my pop-up assembly broke on my lab where you pull the lever up and it goes down.
Yeah.
And so I pulled it out and it was rotten. And it's a pedestal lab, number one, and they're a pain in the rear end. I have to take everything apart and put this other thing. And the part's going to be really hard to find without buying a whole new faucet, which I could do. I went and bought a rubber stopper like my grandpa Schaefer had. Boop, and I stick the rubber stopper in the sink. And when I shave or when I would just wash with the sink, I use the rubber stopper. That's the height of laziness when it comes to repairing something of your own. And you're a plumber. It's not
So
like I don't know
okay.
how to do it.
So what belief led to that identity trait?
I think Grandpa Schaefer taught me that, and his Grandpa Schaefer taught him that.
And so do you think that it was a time management thing? I'm just thinking back, okay, if in grandpa's era when he was growing up, you worked harder probably as a kid.
Man, Matt, they didn't even have running water in Crested Butte.
Yeah, no.
They they got running water and they had one light bulb in the whole house. Everything was you bring in coal, you bring in wood, you kill a chicken, you pluck the chicken, you cook it. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, that was until they moved to Canyon City, they didn't have indoor bathroom. When they moved to Canyon City and Grandpa was 13 years old, they used an outhouse. They washed their hands in a wash basin. They took a bath in a big tub with hot water right in front of the wood
Coal of
stove.
the
Yeah,
stove,
it was
yeah.
a much
So,
harder life.
okay, this is kind of what I'm at. This is along the lines of what I'm driving towards, which is he as an immigrant, he had a set of structural beliefs in this country and embodied them in rural America in the middle in a time when we were coming through kind of an industrial revolution, right?
Yeah, we were.
So yeah, so how much of grandpa's identity was shaped from the beliefs around that time from his perspective just because that was his story in Crested Butte. In what year would you say that was?
Well, he was born in 33, so he lived there from 33 until 44,
Okay,
45.
so in 1933, the Ritz-Carlton in New York City had running water in every room.
Yes.
So his identity and belief structure was based solely on his lived experience. So I wonder, like, looking at, the Rockefellers, what opinion would he have had on that, and how did it play into his opinion once you came along, and what you heard in the household in terms of political responsibility or belief or civic duty. When you were in school, when you and my mom were in school, they still had civics classes. Even by the time I was in high school, it was changed from civics to, I don't know, United States government, and then
Mine was government too, Matt. We didn't have civics. We had
you didn't.
government. Yeah, no, we had strictly government, uh, regular history, American history, government, and world
World
history.
history, American history. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
same. And that might be
but
a
do you
fourth
understand the
thing.
question I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. Um, yeah, no, I think everything was shaped like by that. Everything he did was shaped in that, and not only that, that community in Crested Butte was a Croatian community, Slovenian Croatian community. So it wasn't it wasn't that much different living in Crested Butte than it was living in Pozar, Croatia. They moved to a place that was almost the same, maybe a little colder, not much. They were up in the mountains in Croatia, and
Right.
and they lived in wood cabins, and they lived in a wood cabin in Crested Butte until he moved to Canyon City. Um, I don't think he even considered himself domesticated. This is just how it was, you know. They
So,
didn't have get to go to the there was no picture show.
okay,
They didn't have a
so
movie house.
at what point then did he, I mean, you wouldn't know this, but at what point, as when you were a kid, did you feel you understood part of who you were, the your civic responsibility, your personal identity, and your belief structure? When did that start forming, and how much of it had to do with grandma and grandpa, and how much of it
All of
had
it
to
had to
do
do with
with,
grandma and grandpa. All of it had to do with
so
grandma and grandpa.
in what ways?
Well, because there was things we did every day, every week that didn't change. We went to
Give me
church every
examples.
Sunday. I went
So
to catechism every Saturday.
faith and
Faith and
church
family was everything.
were a big part of your belief, and so then how much of it then becomes your identity?
Oh, I think you can't help it not be your identity. You know, I mean, obviously, and we've talked about this before. We used to have Sunday dinners when you were little. That's all we did. Sunday dinner was everything. You'd go see one grandparents one part of the day and the other grandparents the other part of the day, and it was about family and being together and going to church and all that stuff. That's
So
really what it
was
was
the
until you were a little bit older and we moved away. We moved to Colorado Springs. Then it changed.
but it had changed in society way sooner than that.
But yeah, definitely.
So I guess, okay, a belief is a set of ideas or concepts that one subscribes to, right?
Right.
You could subscribe to an idea or a concept or a thought, but not necessarily identify as that. Do you see what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mhm.
Okay, so at what point, and because where I'm going with this is kind of more loaded in that we're at a place in our current American climate where the right identifies certain things as being uh, uniquely theirs, their beliefs, so therefore their identity, and the left, I think, does the same. And yet, someone who I don't want to be identified as right or left, I have beliefs that I believe that are the similar with people like you, and then I have beliefs that are similar with people on the left that are my friends. So how are how are those things that I believe different than who I am and how I operate?
I don't think your beliefs are different than who you are and how you operate. I think if your belief structure is that strong, strongly embedded in you, and it is your identity. It
So then
becomes
can
your
you
identity.
change your mind without losing your identity?
Well, sure, you can change your mind, and over time, you can change your belief structure. Obviously, and I mean, that's really, really prevalent when you talk to someone who was an atheist and didn't believe in God, and all of a sudden gets saved and believes Jesus Christ is his Lord and Savior. Obviously, that's a huge identity
Well,
change.
or it works in the opposite direction too. When people,
Exactly.
like, I have many friends that, one of my close friends grew up in a very religious house and now no longer has religion
Right,
in their life, and so their belief and they identify as, a non-believer.
right. And that happens too. That definitely happens too. And both ways you can easily tell. And
And
your
so
identity changes and your actions change and everything about you changes.
and so when you look at someone, any world leader, and you look at whether or not your belief structure aligns with their belief structure, what happens when their identity or their belief changes, and where are you left then?
Well, first of all, someone I'm that remote from, a world leader, I really don't know what their belief structure is.
Okay.
I can't I can think I know or
Right.
or or surmise that I know what they're doing, but I go on what they do, period. That's all. When it comes to something like that, you can say one thing over here and not do it, or say one thing over here and do it. And and we've had this discussion before, um, with Trump. I know the things he did, and I don't care how he talks, things he says, all those things that make 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 the left crazy. Um, I watch what he does, and he said he was going to do this, and he did it. And he said he was going to do this, and he did it. And I can give you examples. I don't know if we want to get that far into the weeds on this, but just using that as an example, that's how I relate with that. Now, his true identity and how he do we ever
Or
really know,
character,
or
the things
character
that you
do we
overlook because of the things that he does.
well, yeah. Do we ever really know it? Even if there's a guy saying all the right things and then finding out, well, wait a minute, look what he did behind closed doors, and look what he did. Just because they say it doesn't mean they do it, and just because they don't do it or don't say it doesn't mean they don't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
There's no way we know, and I can't, and that's why it's so important that we don't judge each other so harshly unless you know that person really, really well. And I'm called not to judge you so harshly by your appearance or by what, but what you do tells me everything. And there's an old saying, that same thing we've talked many times about: this person says he's a Christian and this person says he's a Christian. And you will know they are Christians by their fruit. That's what the Bible says. And if my fruit stinks and it's all rotten, I'm probably not a Christian. If I'm sitting there saying I'm a
Right,
Christian,
but you keep going back to how you identify whether someone's a good person or a Christian, or not, right? But what
I don't,
happens when
I
I'm speaking on the public identity of Christianity right now.
right.
The
Well,
public identity of
I can't
Christianity.
speak to that, Matt, because there's so many different factions of Christianity itself in this country right now, and we've had that conversation before too on this podcast. There's no way that this country, who people will say is 70% Christian, is 70% Christian. I don't believe that, because if it was 70% Christian, it would be a totally different country than it is right now.
You
So,
and
and I don't wanna get in the weeds about that either. I'm
Well,
just
no,
telling
I
you,
want you to, elaborate on okay, so, is that the statistic that 70% of this country
I think it's
identifies as Christian? So
70
then
to
we're using the word
77%.
identify, people that identify as being Christian.
Exactly,
Okay, so
exactly.
then so tell me, okay, identify as being Christian. Tell me the top 5 characteristics that you would identify as Christian identity, or that you would label as Christian identity.
That I would label as Christian identity if I observe them doing it.
Mhm.
Obviously, I would never hear them, um, the Bible clearly says, "Out of the mouth comes the abundance of the heart." That's
Okay.
the scripture says, "Out of your mouth comes the abundance of the heart." So if you're spewing garbage out your mouth, you don't have any abundance in your heart. That's one of them. That's an easy one right off the bat. Um, if I and these are kind of
So
like
can we say
identities
what
that
you
aren't
speak? What you speak should match your heart.
what you speak should match your heart.
Okay.
Exactly. Which
Number
and
1.
your actions the same way.
Yeah.
If if I'm sitting here telling you I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, and then Saturday night you see me come rolling out of the bar with a blonde and it's not Louise, then you probably think, guess what? I don't think he's a Christian.
But
Now,
so then why
can
do
people
Christians
slip
allow
once
that
in a
with
while?
Trump?
Huh?
But
I
then
don't know
why
that
do Christians?
Trump's a Christian. I don't know. I don't know if he's a Christian or not.
Okay, keep
I, I'm
going with
not.
your
I'm not close
identity.
enough
Uh,
to him.
okay.
I'd have to be really a lot closer to him to know if he's a Christian or not.
Based on the things that you see in the media, would you want to be closer with him?
I'd like to sit and talk to him. Oh, I'd like to ask him all kinds of questions.
What question would you ask him first?
What question would I ask him first?
Uh-huh.
I would ask him, do you really believe Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior?
Oh.
That would be my number one question.
And
Because he said that before.
and he would lie to you.
Well, may or may not, but when he did, and if he said, yes, I do believe that he's my Lord and Savior, the next time I heard him say something really, really bad, I'd call him on it. And that's what I'm talking about, judging people. I can't judge you unless I know you. The Bible says to take a brother to task, not a stranger. I'm not responsible for the stranger. But if I'm like, for example, I have a really close friend, and we won't say his name, and he's a brother in Christ, and we go to church together, and we do a lot of things together. And at any time, I can take him to task, and he can take me to task, because we're called to do that. And that's if my mouth is saying something it shouldn't be saying, or if my actions are portraying something that what we believe in our group as Christian activities,
Okay,
then
so then I wonder how if so going back, okay, there's a lot of things we haven't closed the gap on. The
okay.
70% that you think aren't that don't so I'm trying to get what characteristics you would identify that would level out that 70% and say these people don't have this, this, or this. Number one is what you speak matches your heart. What are the top? Give me two more.
You can't support abortion in any form and say you're a Christian. Now, these are my opinions, remember. You're asking me what I think, right?
And why that one over so many other things that could define.
Because that's the basis of life. That's the basis of life. It just on so many levels. It's funny when I come up and put my ear against Grandpa Schaefer and he was dying, and the nurse came in and said his heart stopped. He's dead. He's gone, is what they said. And I saw the monitor, and I think to myself, we say people are dead when their heart stops. Why don't we say they're alive when their heart starts beating? Because their heart starts beating at what? What week does their heart start beating in the womb? We don't say they're alive.
Right.
They would that would be terrible to say. I say they're alive, but society doesn't say they're alive because they're still in the womb. But the minute their heart starts beating, I think they're alive. I think before that, but even if we took it to that level,
Okay, but
you,
okay, so
so
that's the
you asked why.
characteristic. Okay,
Okay,
but
let's go on.
no, but I because okay, yeah, we can go on. That's your opinion, and that's how you would define someone who's a Christian. But I know plenty of Christians who have had abortions,
Right,
and
right. I know. I
and
know.
and
You're asking me
what
my
sin is
opinion.
worse than the other sin? Like
No,
a
you're
sin is
asking.
a sin.
Yes, right. But you're asking me for my list, so
Okay,
I'm
so
giving you
what's
my
your
list.
what's your third?
Third would be Israel. You cannot be a Christian, a devout Christian, and not support Israel.
Well, okay, so then this is perfect for what a belief is,
Oh, this
and
is going to go in the
hold on.
weeds.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, but then what's the point of having this conversation if you don't?
Right.
There are people who align themselves both with the Christian faith and the MAGA party that are also members of the KKK and believe that they should kill Jews.
I don't think there's any KKK member. I think there's people that voted for Trump that are KKK members. Yeah, and I think there's KKK
How
members
is
that
that different
call
than what
them
I said?
there's KKK members that call themselves Christians. Can't be. Don't work. Sorry.
Okay,
You're not a
so
Christian.
okay,
You can go to whatever church you want, but you're not a Christian.
okay. So you're not afraid to say that just because they go to Sunday mass or to a Sunday
Don't mean nothing.
gospel,
Don't mean nothing.
and they're all together in their congregation and they're reading from the Bible that you read from, they're because they're not practicing what the Bible says, they are not a Christian.
Yeah, Jesus says, "If you love me, you'll obey my commandments." Doesn't say you have to be saved by my commandments. You're saved by grace through faith, not of your own works, so none that should boast. But the fact is, you cannot be a Christian and not uh, strive to do the things that Jesus asked you to do. So the next one would be on my list of number 4 would be forgiveness. If you hold any animosity or hatred towards someone, the Bible clearly says, if you do not forgive, you will not be forgiven. That scares me to death. So anybody, you're supposed to keep short accounts with people and say, I forgive you no matter what. I forgive you. We might not hang out together, but whatever. I'm not going to hold hatred in my heart against you. And that would be another list. Their actions should be what Jesus said. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. This is a Christian. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
You can't do
Okay,
that's on
yeah,
the list.
okay. We're getting a little preachy, and we said we're not going to preach.
Well, but
Um,
that's part of my list.
okay, and that's fine. So now let me ask you: do you think that there is a Christian national what? Why are you laughing?
Because for you thinking I'm a preacher really makes me laugh because I'm so not a preacher, but that's
No,
okay.
but you're not a
I can
preacher,
get
but
preachy.
in that answer, you rattled off scripture like a preacher.
Okay, I can get a little preachy.
Can't we all?
Yeah.
Going back to, or anyone with a podcast, which is
Amen.
everyone.
Everyone. I'm an expert.
My neighbor's dog has a podcast. I'm not joking. Okay. Uh, Would you say that there is a Christian identity in this country?
I think that there's several Christian identities, and I think that depending on who's looking at that identity defines that identity. I think the left would have a total different idea of a Christian identity as opposed to what I believe is a true Christian as a Christian identity. Like you said, there's people believe that there's KKK members that are Christians. They're not. They can say that all they want. You
But
can't.
dad, but if you call yourself a Christian and you go to a church that has a cross, a crucifix, and you read from the Bible and you tithe and you live in that community and you are calling yourself a Christian, then you are a Christian.
No, no, you're not. God will define which you
Okay,
are.
yes,
The
but on
Bible
this
will define.
earth, you become a part of the Christian
I'm going to
brand
get
or the
preachy
Christian
again.
identity.
I'm going to
How,
get
okay,
preachy
so
again.
how, and then how do you, because this is what bothered me in the 2016 election, and I hate going back to the 2016 election because
My
a lot
gosh,
of bad things. What's that?
I can't remember that far back, Matt.
You can't remember Hillary and Trump?
Of course I do. I'm just being.
Well, that was when I really felt on social media like it was a low point for America and Americans, because especially those who were on the side of the left, that this was all around the same time of Colin Kaepernick and all of this. And we started talking about this on another episode of this podcast, but the idea that because I had different vision and hope for our country as a collective of people that have the right to the First Amendment beliefs of everything from their faith to how they practice their life to how they live their life, so long as they're not intruding on any other unwilling person, I was automatically lumped as someone who wasn't a Christian or who was part of this radical snowflake left, or it became such an my identity was lost. Not mine personally. I knew who I was, but I didn't fit in on the left and I didn't fit in on the right. And now all of a sudden I'm being attacked by people of friends and family, my own close family on the right on social media, because I'm standing up for things that I thought embodied the Christian ideal, which is don't call people bad names and don't be derogatory towards women and don't, and all these things that I saw at the time, President-elect Trump behaving that way. And I was
Well,
getting called out.
reportedly behaving that way. We
Not
never saw
reportedly,
it.
he was on a closed, he
We never
himself was
saw it.
talking to Billy Bush and said what he said. That wasn't reported. That was him. It wasn't that. It wasn't. It was. it wasn't that long before the election, but regardless of whether it was the day before the election or 10 years before the election, it was something that someone who's trying to get the Christian vote said, and somehow everyone that identified as a Christian on the right justified it.
They didn't justify what he did. Again, what people say and what people do are two different things. The things that he said he was going to do, and we've talked about this before, as far as my list of why I voted for him,
No, I
was
understand.
he did that, and he did it,
Right,
I
but do you hear what I'm not talking about whether or not he did the things, and you're right, and I will say, and this is something that the left really can't do. Some people can, but now even Bill Maher is probably not considered the left. And it's weird that Tucker Carlson is saying things now that I agree with, which is bizarre. But
and Bill Maher's saying a lot of things that I agree with.
there are things that Trump has done that did serve the American people. And although I disagree wholeheartedly with how he implemented it, it did benefit, or it will benefit, the United States. That said, I could still look at him and think I'm not voting for someone who openly brags about these things or openly challenges the very structure of our constitution. And saying things like I can shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and get away with it is just not a very good leader look, Christian look, bringing the people together kind of look. So it was hard for me back then when
I
those things were
understand.
being said.
I understand.
And but then I also did not agree with a lot of the things that my at the time party was saying either.
Right.
Now, when people, I mean, people don't ask because I think because I'm gay, they just automatically assume that I vote for the left,
Right.
which is also a stupid assumption because
Right.
your beliefs and your identity don't have to align, I don't think. Like, in other words, if someone's going to say that I'm a gay white male as my identity, then they're going to automatically assume that my belief structure is liberal white male.
My side, my party would probably say that. Your party may or may not. Or not your party. I should say the right would probably say that about you, and the left probably would not. You know, yeah, I think your identity flows out of your belief structure.
But when does it go too far, and when are we going to wake up and say I've lost myself in this idea of who I thought I was and what I believed based solely on things that were never really substantial?
I'm never going to say
Well,
that.
you're not, because you embody what being a Christian is, which is you serve God first, right?
I
But
try
what
to.
happens,
Not
what
very
I'm
good at
sorry?
it, but I try to.
I don't think that Donald Trump wakes up to serve God first. I don't
And
think
that
that,
could be.
and I don't
I
know
wouldn't
that
argue.
many leaders do, if I'm being honest.
I wouldn't argue with you that way. I don't know. Yeah, I would think it'd be very hard. It's harder for a rich man to go through. It's harder for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. But so if you say that 70%, and I don't know if this number is true or not, but you said
I'm
70% of this
sorry.
country.
It's harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
So yeah, that could be. You could be right. And I don't know why Christ said that. It must be pretty hard when you have that kind of wealth. I don't know. I'm sure that it's not true.
That opens up a whole, I want to go back really quickly because the thing that I find so fascinating is when then, if it's so easy for the right to identify me as one thing based on one marker, or the left to do that to the right, how will we ever get back to a common sense approach to selecting a leader that is in line with our our hopes, our dreams, our faith, our on the left, our thought and belief that we should be allowed to believe or not believe accordingly, and that feels like it's getting taken away. Um,
I think part of that splinter will never. I think part of that will never be healed, never be fixed ever again. The line. I think the line has been drawn in the sand. I think that line is clearly drawn in the sand now. I think the last two elections, the line has been drawn in the sand.
But you don't think that there are people that are on the left that I know that you said your top 3 or top 5 things that identify you as or mark you as a Christian, but I think I know plenty of people. You know the church that I go to, it's here in Sherman Oaks. It's a Catholic church, and there are plenty of people that vote left, liberal, and vote right, conservative, that go to this church, and they all coexist, and they all, and by the way, very diverse crowd. It's not just a bunch of white people in Sherman Oaks. It's
A
it's
bunch
a
of
very
white people.
mixed, BIPOC, Asian, Caucasian community of people that all practice, and half of them vote one way and half of them vote another way. If
Matt, until the lines are so defined now, at least in my mind, and a lot of my friends, I will never ever vote, and you know this because we've talked about it. I'll never vote the Democratic platform ever, as long as pro-choice is its number one, or one of its highest, um, you know, platforms. I just won't do it. Highest thing on our platform. I won't
Well,
do it
I
ever.
don't know that you can say ever, because if it came to a point where that was on the same platform as defending Israel, you might change your mind.
No, I won't.
Well, then which do you pick? The pro life or Israel?
The pro life was number one. Remember, pro life was number one.
No, pro life was number 2.
No, pro life was number
No,
one.
number 1 was what you speak in your heart. What
No,
you
no,
speak.
no. For voting for someone,
Oh, okay.
for voting for someone. Yeah, what makes you a Christian, or how I would identify as a Christian.
But it doesn't bother you at all that the person that you voted for probably, it, at least paid for at least 3 abortions. I'm being liberal with my guess.
I don't know that. Again, I don't know that, and I'm not, and I have no idea that that's true or not true. Robert or Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy had naked swimming pool parties in there, and they were Democrats in 61 and 62, and my parents loved them. You know, John F. Kennedy in 1960 got elected. They thought he was good, and he was the first Catholic to get
Okay,
elected.
so this is you, Dad. Thank you so much for tying everything back to the beginning, which is what I asked you. So when did your belief system become your identity, and how is that different than what your parents were?
Okay, now I know where you're going. Thanks for leading me down the golden path.
I mean, it only took 37 minutes.
37 minutes and 39 seconds to be exact. Okay. I know when it happened. I told you this a long, long time ago. I hope these people that are listening find this interesting because, but still, it's the truth.
We might have one listener.
I in 1976, okay, in 1975, I graduated, and I went to college. And believe me, grandma and grandpa, and uh, one set of grandparents were Democrats through and through, right? and
Okay.
and I had been brought up that way, and we were John F. Kennedy Democrats, which really John F. Kennedy was pretty darn conservative, and nowadays he'd really be conservative.
Okay.
But
Okay.
anyways, that's how it was. Well, in 1976, I can't believe I'm admitting this in public. I voted for Jimmy Carter. That was the first time I got to vote. I turned 18 in 1976 in October, and in November I got to vote. Right? Yeah, 76. Yep. Yeah. So in October I turned 18. In
I also
November I
got
got
to
to
vote
vote.
for Bill Clinton in
I
1996.
vote for
That was
Jimmy
my first.
Carter is who I voted for.
Okay.
And in that, during that 4 year period, I went to school for 2 years of that, got married. You you were born in 78,
Yeah.
right? So now
Unfortunately.
I'm a
Yeah.
dad. Now I'm working. Shree was born in 80, right?
Yeah.
And that was the next election cycle. That's when I did a 180-degree turnaround.
And voted for
180
Reagan.
degree turnaround. I realized that I'm not a liberal. I'm not a Democrat. I realized that my core values and my Christian values led me to be more towards the right, which was Ronald Reagan in 1980.
Yeah.
And that's who I voted for, was Ronald Reagan. I liked exactly what he said, exactly what he stood for. I hated the fact that Jimmy Carter did not go to Iran and get our men out.
He
I
did.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He
Yeah, that
didn't.
was
He
the last
didn't.
thing.
No, he didn't. I made $100 off your Grandpa Smith because of that. Because Grandpa Smith was so devout and a
How
Democrat.
did they get out? They did get out, Dad.
I'm telling you how they get out. Let me finish.
Okay.
In 1980, uh, Ronald Reagan says, by the time I take office, if those people aren't out, I'll go in and get them, and they won't like how we come and get them. Grandpa Smith said that ain't going to happen. He bet me $100. I said, before Ronald Reagan takes the oath of office, those guys will be coming out of that country. Well, the day before and the day he was literally taking the oath of office, that airplane was flying out of Iran with our Marines on it. So right then and there, I knew what was going to happen, and that would have been 81, or I guess that would have been November of 80 or whatever it was. Anyways, Grandpa had to pay me $100. They came out because Reagan became president, not because Carter.
But
That was one of his biggest
he had
failures.
been in negotiation for a long time.
4 years, almost
Okay.
4 years, didn't do nothing. And I'm not saying Jimmy Carter was a bad man. Jimmy Carter, in my eyes,
But that's when your identity. That's when you became. That's when you
but
knew
that's when
your
it all
beliefs
changed
and matched your identity.
I
Okay.
hated what America stood for and how we cowered down to people who, and that was, you got to remember too, that in 1977 the Shah of Iran fell,
Yeah.
and that's what caused all that.
And here we are in 2026, and we're still. I mean, this
We're
episode is
still dealing with
pre-recorded, so we
those
don't know where
people.
we're at right now with Iran. But
We're,
hopefully, there's been a resolve and it's
yeah,
peaceful.
exactly.
And hopefully, it leads to the liberation of many, many millions of women as well. I will say that. That's my belief.
Oh man, that would,
I
if
think,
that alone happened, would be
and that's
perfect.
okay, and that's the thing that I struggle with in our country that people don't see on the left a lot of the time is how wonderful the First Amendment is. I mean, yes, I think right now the right is misunderstanding that I don't think that everything should be defined by the Bible, and I don't think our civic laws should be defined solely by the Christian or the Judeo-Christian belief. But I do appreciate that we have the First Amendment, and that in this country, a woman can be whatever she wants to be, a man can be whatever he wants to be, and everyone in between can be whatever they want to be so far in this country. Whether or not you call them by what they want to be, um,
That's a different story.
that's a different story.
They can still be what they want to be. I just don't have to call them that.
Well, but it's getting scary. There are places. Anthony read something to me the other day that I challenged and said it wasn't true, and then we looked up and it is true. In Ohio, they've just passed a law that you cannot wear makeup if you're a male. You cannot wear makeup, but it's a technicality. It's like in public spaces and performance. So they're going after, I think, drag queens with this bill, but it could easily then be turned on some kid who is 15 or 16 and wants to wear makeup and a dress outside of the house in Ohio and could get arrested. I think that's wrong. I think let them be what they want to be. You don't have to agree with it.
That's right.
But let them be what they want to be.
Yeah,
okay. Go ahead.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think you agree with
what
that
Dave
too.
Chappelle said about the First Amendment, because I loved it.
What is it?
He's way smarter than people think he is. He's a
Oh,
brilliant.
I think most people know how smart
man.
Dave Chappelle is.
He really is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's a comedian, and yeah, he gets vulgar.
He said some things against the gay community, but I'll get a lot of pushback from this, but they're not.
First Amendment.
Not wrong. Yeah, and also he's not wrong some of the time. But anyway, go ahead.
So I can't remember when he said this. I think it was in his either his acceptance speech for the Mark Twain Award, or it was when he gave a acceptance, or he spoke at the Mark Twain Award for John. What's his friend? God, I can't think of his name now either. John. He was on the same platform as Chappelle. And anyway, Chappelle said, "We thank God we have the First Amendment in this country," because comedians, that's everything to them. And we have
even though Kathy Griffin was put on no-fly lists and all of the things for
yeah, which is wrong.
Yeah,
and then he looked at the camera and said, "And if we don't have the First Amendment, well, that's why we have the Second Amendment."
Yeah, and you love that.
And I love that. I love that,
well, because Chappelle lives on like a ranch out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure he's, he's got an arsenal. as I know you do, and you bragged about it on our first
No,
episode of
I
this
don't have
podcast.
anything. I have nothing. No,
You already put it out there on
I don't.
episode 1.
I don't have anything.
All right. Let's
No.
but okay, so the identity thing in terms of I think what we the conversation that we could be having with one another in public spaces in our community, and especially with those that disagree with us, is rather than what do you identify with or how do you identify, what if we just said, why do you believe that? Like what makes you believe this specific thing that you're fighting for? Because I think oftentimes people fight for things that they don't even know why they're fighting. It's just part of. Now I'm not talking about something as profound and as deeply divided as, pro-choice and pro-life, but I'm talking about common courtesies and just seeing something and saying, whether it's my guy in office or your girl in office, what they said was wrong. They shouldn't have said that. It was wrong. It's not a good look for us as humans, and it's not going to bring us closer together as a country. And I think until we're able to do that, I think that whether it's a belief that becomes our identity or whether we identify with certain things on either side of the table, like me, I see both sides of a lot of different arguments and agree with them. uh, why can't we hold space for a difference of opinion?
Well, I think what we're doing is the start of that, because truthfully, we're on opposite ends of many things we believe in, and if you can't talk about them without, um, without violence or even mean conversation and unkind things and all of that, then yeah, then we're lost as a society. We really are. I mean, that's at least as a society that we have now. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot
I
of
I I
places.
I agree with you, Dad, and that scares me. But it might not be a bad thing. Maybe the evolution of, I know you don't like that word from our word episode, but maybe the evolution of our country, the United States of America, challenges us to like really dig deep and decide if the First and Second Amendments really do mean something to us. And I mean, it's not like we haven't gone through a civil war before. I pray and hope and plead and beg with my friends and my community, and that's why I create art, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast. I don't want to have a civil war in this country. I don't
Gosh,
want to be
no.
fighting against people that I believe differently in this country. The whole premise of this country is that we can believe different things and not end it with violence.
Yeah, no, that's why I hate it when I hear people on both sides saying this is the worst time of America and America's the worst. No, no, 500,000 people died in the Civil War, and they were all Americans.
Yeah.
Don't tell me it's the worst time.
No, I
When you
agree
have
with
to go
you.
out your door and start shooting at someone,
Well,
then
that's
it's
where you see a very clear lack of the ability to hold an attention span longer than 30-second algorithms, and the insight to go and do your research because of whatever class you missed in high school or college, or if you didn't have the opportunity to go to high school or college but you live in this country, you really should take the time to know our history. And not all of it is bad, and just because we were um colonized, if that's the word du jour, yeah, we were colonized like every other developed country. So I don't know what to do with that argument
technically,
either.
technically not much of us was colonized. Not much of this land was colonized.
Mm,
Uh,
I don't want to get it. We're towards the end of this episode, so
But
I
I
want
got
to
to
end
tell
on
you
that.
this, just
Wait,
because I
no.
started that,
Okay.
and you need to know this because when you say that, we bought the Louisiana Purchase,
From
which was
France.
over one third of our land,
I
more than
understand
one
that.
third,
Dad, I
and the
know
rest we
history,
bought
and
from
I hope.
Spain.
Uh,
So,
I know
so
that.
be mad at the Europeans for colonizing it. Be mad
Well,
at
I think.
France and Spain for colonizing it.
Okay,
All we did was buy it from them.
you good? You got that out right.
I got that out.
Goodness. Okay. Let's end on a positive note with hopefully a funny anecdotal story of a time in your life where your certainty or your identity in a belief or a belief in your identity backfired?
A belief in my identity
Something that you were so certain about and it backfired.
Well, that's easy. When me and your
Okay.
mom split up. When me and your mom split up. That that
So
backfired.
your
That was
identity as a husband and
as
father?
a husband, as a Christian, as all of these things that I believed was solid and well maintained and everything, and it backfired. That's a good word for it. It definitely backfired.
I really wanted to end this on a positive note, but you just
Well,
took us.
I mean, that's positive. We're great friends now, and life went on, and um, I don't hate no one, and no one hates me. I don't think, and well, I don't know. I can't say that, but your mom doesn't. I know that, and that's
I
a good
I
thing. But that would be
I
a
will
backfire.
say I'm gonna say that my certainty and this I guess is also not a a jovial realization, but I think my certainty in arguing with you in my late teens and early 20s about the idea that there were people on this earth that wanted to kill a group of people, Christians specifically, I really pushed back a lot. I was so certain, and now I'm seeing where that kind of backfired on me in and that there are people, and I'm not saying that every, and please, to our listening audience, I don't believe this. I have Muslim friends and people that I love very much, but I do now see that, like any other religion or organization, there are radicals who do want the death of something. And in this case, I think I really learned the hard way that there are people that are coming for Christians because they are Christian. I just don't know that they're gonna go for the ones that are true Christians, or are they just gonna go for anyone that identifies as being a Christian?
Well,
Going back to the
I don't know. You'd have to look at you're talking about Boko Haram and what they've done in Africa, in all portions of it, and killed 100,000 people. And those people, if you want to call someone a true Christian, those people go to church knowing that they could die that day because they're
yeah.
going to church and saying they're a Christian. Let's see how many Christians in the United States there are when that day comes. And that day might come. I hope it never comes here. I pray it never comes here. But then you will know right away, Matt, when someone's got a gun to your head and says, denounce Christ or die, and you don't denounce Christ and you die, because that's exactly what's happening in Nigeria and Sudan and those places, to the
Yeah.
tune of 100 and some thousand people. And those people, well, we'll see who the true Christians are. That's all. That's all I got to say. You'll know. My generation might not see it. Pray not, but I promise you, yours will. And
I hope
so
not. I hope you're wrong about that. Even though
I do too.
I can be big enough to admit that I did fight back with you a lot and really push back on something that now I see both sides of something, and I realize and recognize because, um terrorists film their own acts of violence towards Jews on October 7th,
What a
So
terrible
I,
thing.
I know that evil does exist now, and
Evil
that
does
is
exist. Amen.
unfortunately part of my identity that I don't like. No, living and walking down the street knowing that at any moment something bad can happen.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I think and on that note, I think the American identity is entitled. All of us as Americans are super entitled in that we get
Definitely.
up we get up and we do things throughout our day, and even after the events of September 11th in Oklahoma and other, homegrown terrorist activities and even school shootings, we still take for granted how blessed we are in comparison to other countries where bombing and going into a bomb shelter on a high holiday is part of a
A
daily,
routine.
yeah, activity.
Yeah. No, I agree
And
with you
I'm not just
100%.
talking about the Middle East, I'm talking about all over the world.
I pushed back hard about white privilege, because not that there wasn't white privilege, but my terminology was American privilege, because we as Americans are very privileged. And the worst of anybody that's happening in America right now is nothing compared to what's happening in certain parts of the globe, including
And I
China.
hear you. I think that both can exist. I think there is American privilege, and I think there is white privilege. I do.
Yeah. But American privilege
But the privilege that Americans have
is enormous.
Is enormous. Yeah.
And you've traveled a lot and been to a lot of countries, and so have I. And I can't believe how good we are. Even the worst areas of our country are really good compared to places I've seen and been.
If you want to hear, and I don't know why you would, but if you want to hear Ye perform, you can't do it in the United Kingdom, but you can do it in the United States because the First Amendment.
Amen.
All right. I don't know if that was the strongest end to an episode, but it's my birthday month and you're on a motorcycle somewhere in this country. So I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're on your way to DC. And I thank our audience for listening, and I thank you always, Dad, for being willing to have this conversation, and I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Until next time, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.